All right, and I see we have 125 folks that have joined us already. That is awesome. And so I see somebody said that the resource page that we have linked to is producing an error. Is the address correct? So that was just the shortened link that I tried to do. We have a longer link that Claire or Greg, if you could put that in the chat box, that would be great. I thought I'd double check that bit.ly link, but let's see here. All right, yeah, the bit.ly, the shortened link did work for me, but it's hard because you have to type it in, and I believe that's an I, a capital I instead of a 1 or an L, which is kind of confusing. So Claire is dropping in, or Greg is dropping in our the link in the chat box, which you should be able to click into or just copy and paste, and that'll be a little bit easier. Oops, keep on losing my chat box here. And hi, Kellyanne, glad you were able to join us. Kellyanne will be helping out in the chat box as well.
Happy to be here. Hello, everyone.
And everybody, we'll get started in just a couple of minutes here. It's 12:57. Let a few more folks trickle in. All right. Oh, yeah, sure, certainly, for the YouTube info. Let me just drop that link in the chat box. That might be the easiest thing. It's just going to be our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/starnetlibraries. So let me just do that real quick. And Greg, if you're in the chat box, would you mind dropping that our YouTube link too? I think that should send them there, but I just want to make sure. Thank you, Elizabeth. And so just as a little Zoom housekeeping, if you will, I know we have so many folks joining us and some of you may not have used Zoom before. So as a participant, you can't really break anything from your end. So you can move around the boxes. You can make me bigger. You can make me smaller. You can adjust the screen. You can go full screen. I wouldn't worry too much about messing anything up. Elizabeth, Claire, Christine, and Kellyanne, that doesn't really go for you. Doesn't count for you. So, but for the most part, it is pretty customizable. When one of us, the presenters, is speaking, it's kind of hard to monitor the chat box and talk at the same time. So just know that there might be a little bit of a lag there. Again, we'll say it 100 times. When you introduce yourself in the chat box, please make sure you're sharing with all panelists and attendees, and not just all panelists. All panelists is the default for some reason. And if you can hear me talking right now, then you probably aren't having audio problems, but there are some call-in numbers to the right. If you find the chat feature distracting, which we do hope that you participate in the chat and talk a lot and share all your great ideas. But if you do find the chat feature distracting, click on the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to open it up, and then you can move it to the bottom of your screen. So yeah, like right now I'm seeing like there's 17 messages, there's 18 messages. So so tips for viewing, yeah, you can, like I said, you can resize and move the location of the video and slide screens by clicking and dragging them. We have that resource sheet listed up there. That is a bit.ly, and then it's 34, capital I, capital W, capital S, capital F, capital B. So we'll continuously drop that in the chat box so that everyone has access to that. We do have some folks joining us from YouTube Live as well. This is a very popular webinar, and we had some overflow people, so we're streaming from YouTube Live. So if you're watching on YouTube, hello. I don't see your messages one-on-one, but we do have a colleague, Annie Holland, who's trying to kind of play the middleman there and make sure that you're getting the links and that we're getting your messages. So I think with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. Let me just check our chat box real quick. All right. If I can find it, weird. All right, so we just have a lot of people saying hello. Awesome. I've got a Q&A here. Okay, so yeah, sorry, with the bit.ly link, it's this person is saying a lowercase l and not a capital I. So I apologize that I know those look a lot alike. So again, we'll just keep on dropping that chat box, the link in the chat box. So all right, let me get back to my slides. And let's go ahead and get started. A few expectations and guidelines for today. As I mentioned, we had over 500 people show up, which if we have 260 people in the room, that makes sense. You know, things come up. So when you are asking a question, try to use the Q&A feature, just because there's so many of us in the chat box that it could get really, it most likely will get very, very, a lot of messages coming through there. So when you're using the chat, we'll say it again, make sure your messages are being sent to all panelists and attendees. And again, there's hundreds of us in this webinar. We really want you all to participate in the chat box and get that discussion going. But please be courteous and kind of patient too, and know that we might not get to your comment. Normally, we really try to get to every comment and read them out loud, kind of reflect on them. But today, it could be a little bit hard. So another note, we're all working from home. We don't have our Ethernet to plug right into. We don't have our full setup, dual monitors and all that stuff. So we're going to hopefully avoid any tech problems, knock on wood. But if we do have some tech problems, just be patient. We'll work through them. I put some call-in numbers there. If you are having audio problems, it could be on my end, but it could also be on your end with bandwidth. So if you're having audio problems, before you get frustrated, try logging out of the room, logging back in, reconnecting. If that doesn't work, there are call-in numbers, and that should have been in the email that Zoom sent you as well. So once again, there's that resource sheet. Greg, Claire, if you want to drop it in. Annie, if you want to drop in the link bank on YouTube Live, that would be great as well. And it's, it's a weird time for everybody, and we're just so thankful that you all could join us today. And if you have to jump off or anything like that, don't worry, because this is recorded and it'll be available probably within about 24 hours. So we usually get the recordings, the slides, the link bank up on our website pretty quickly. So don't worry if you have to run away and take care of some kids, or I don't know, let your dog inside, or take a call or anything like that. No big deal. All right, so we're gonna do a little bit of an introduction, maybe a fun little icebreaker poll question. We have some wonderful, excellent speakers today. I'm really excited about it. Then we're going to turn things over to Christine Shupla from the Lunar and Planetary Institute. Christine's a wonderful colleague of ours that's been working with libraries and STEM for quite some time. And she's going to talk a little bit about some cultural sky and constellation stories, a few different resources you can access digitally or virtually for this summer. Then I'm going to turn things over to Elizabeth Nicolai. I should have spelled this out. She's from Anchorage Public Library. We've worked with Elizabeth for, I don't know, a year or two now. Or gosh, longer with that with some projects, but I had the privilege this time last year, actually, we were up in Anchorage and we were watching some of her programs and doing a workshop at her library. And when the COVID-19 stuff started to happen, I noticed that Anchorage Public Library was really quick to do a lot of virtual programming. So I wanted to bring Elizabeth on to talk a little bit about some of their strategies, some of their ideas for still doing STEAM-tastic programs in light of everything that's going on. Then we want to talk a little bit about night sky viewings as a potential avenue for virtual summertime CSLP or just summertime programming in general. It might not seem like, we did night sky viewings last year. We talked about space last year. How does that tie into Imagine Your Story? But there's actually, as you'll find out in this webinar, a lot of great stories. So we're hoping to do all that conversation in about 40 or 45 minutes so we can have time to hear from you all and to hear about some of the things that you're doing, how you're pivoting in light of the COVID-19 crisis and how you're planning to do your summer programming. So jam-packed agenda per usual. And I want to start with a poll question. This one, I think this idea came from Elizabeth. So let me pull that up. I'm going to go ahead and launch, allow panelists to vote. All right, it's a fun one. What's the hardest part about working from home? And we'll give you guys like 30 or 45 seconds to answer. If you can't find the polls, if you find your toolbar, it's either in the top or at the bottom of your screen, and then you click on the polls button. It should be popping up right now. I see the results coming in, so it looks like most of you are finding it. Lori says, what if we're still working? That's a good point. And Sally says, oh, Lori, make sure your messages are going to all panelists and attendees. Sally says, none of the above. I'm too close to my sewing machine. That's pretty good. All right, so we have 166 folks have voted. I guess I'll give you guys like 5-10 more seconds. None of the above, okay. I'm essential to keep the curbsiders here. I've gotten addicted to sewing masks out of outrageous fabrics. That sounds awesome. Oh, Animal Crossing, the new game. All right, so let me end this. Let me launch it or share the results. So 32% or 14% said pets, 15% said partners or roommates. You might see my my wife walk around at some point during this. 37% said proximity to the kitchen. So yeah, it could be a problem. Maybe some folks saying that they're still working, they're just going home and they're sewing masks till midnight. That's awesome. I love hearing that. You guys are really doing your part. Yeah, not the kids necessarily, but their digital learning assignments. That's from Atlas. So yeah, maybe some of the homework they're sending home. All right, awesome. So I'm going to stop sharing those results, and we're going to move on to, oh yeah, to introduce ourselves. Sorry. So yeah, if you don't know me, my name is Brooks Mitchell. I work for the Star Library Network, and we're joined here. I'll let you guys jump on and introduce yourself really quick.
I can go. I am Elizabeth Nicolai. I am the Youth Services Coordinator for the Anchorage Public Library in Anchorage, Alaska.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Shupla, and I'm calling you from Houston, Texas. I'm the Manager for Education and Public Engagement at the Lunar and Planetary Institute.
Hi, everybody. My name is Claire Ratcliffe. I am one of the education coordinators at the Space Science Institute. So I am here joining from Boulder, just like Brooks. Good to see you all here.
All right, awesome. And then, so we have Kelly and LeConte as well. She's going to be in the chat box, putting in some great tips and ideas. We have Greg Moshammer. He's going to be in the chat box as well. And then over on YouTube Live, if you're watching on YouTube right now, Annie Holland and Beatrice are going to be putting stuff in the chat box there. So a big team for a big webinar today. I see I have a Q&A. Let me just check this too. Okay. All right. So I want to talk just really quickly about our STEM Activity Clearinghouse. Most of you probably know about our STEM Activity Clearinghouse. This isn't anything foreign to you. But since we have so many people on today, I just wanted to say that this is a wonderful resource for libraries that are doing STEM and STEAM. We don't recommend this possibly. We have over 430 activities, 440 activities on there. We don't recommend sending this to families at home as a whole resource because it could be really overwhelming, and it's really designed for library staff, informal STEAM facilitators in mind. So we do have some selected things from our STEM Activity Clearinghouse that we recommend, and we are putting those in our STEAM Ahead at Home newsletter. So actually, let me just jump back really quick, say a few more things. 440 activities designed for the library setting. They work really well in library setting. They're sortable, and we have different collections as well. So we have an Imagine Your Story collection with all of these wonderful hands-on activities that you could do for this summer program. Of course, in light of everything that's going on, that looks a little bit different, but really would love for you to utilize this resource. This is in that link bank resource sheet that we dropped in the chat box. It's probably a good cue for us to drop it in one more time. But we are taking out specific resources from our STEM Activity Clearinghouse that we think like this would be good for you to send home to your family patrons. And we're putting this in our STEAM Ahead at Home newsletter. So just to get this, it's not very hard. All you have to do is sign up for our StarNet newsletter. There is a link to do that on our resource sheet. So we have different virtual programs you can engage in. We'll do this one today, actually. We have a family at home, like a activity sheet or activity guide that you could send out. And then we have a refresh your skills section. So if you're looking for PD opportunities right now, maybe you're not in the library, but you're still trying to advance your, librarianship. We have some old webinars, some archived resources that we're putting in there. So we're trying to send this out every week, you know, maybe every 2 weeks sometimes, but we don't want to be a fire hose of information for you, but we do want to provide some awesome resources that you can do. So that brings me to my next point. This link is also in your resource sheet. We're doing a survey, and you can read the copy here, but it's basically we're trying to figure out how we can best serve you all during this time. We'll also ask that at the end of this webinar. There's a survey question that it should redirect you to. So yeah, again, just trying to get a gauge on how we can best support you and help you. I'll also reference this survey later on in the webinar because there is a connection to possible virtual programs with the Night Sky Network and Solar System Ambassadors. All right, so a couple of upcoming, I say webinars, they're not really webinars, and we haven't launched them yet. And the registration will be really limited for these. But if there's a really big interest, I think we'd like to maybe see if we can offer these more often. So they're just StarNet social hours, and it's a chance for us all to get together and talk about, how our STEAM programming's changed, how we're doing our STEAM programming in the future, and then just to see some familiar faces. These will be launching later this week. I realize it's Thursday, so yeah, they better get launched tomorrow, I guess. And we're capping registration at 35. If you come to sign up for these, if you check tomorrow on our website, you see it's open, you sign up and you're not allowed in because registration's full, let me know, because I would love to know kind of like that response, and we could possibly do a few more of these just to give everybody a chance to talk. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Christine Shupla. She's going to be talking about some really, really cool cultural sky stories that you can leverage this summer. So, all right, Christine, I'll stop my sharing and you can pick up on your end.
Thanks, Brooks. Hi, everyone. And we're so glad that you're here with us. Somebody's already asked about SkyTellers. Let's go ahead and talk about SkyTellers and some of the other programs that you might be able to use this summer. Let's move those things out of the way so they don't block the screen. So SkyTellers was developed many years ago. It's stories told by Native American storytellers. There's 10 different stories. The video for them is extremely simple. It's basically stars, and each story is followed up with a science story. Many of the science stories are told by a Native American astronaut. So they're presented without detailed graphics, and they would prefer that the storytellers did that intentionally. They would prefer that these not include someone's attempt to create coyote, for instance. I'm going to play just a couple seconds here of one of the stories for you to hear.
Creator took one of the stones and placed it high in the sky. The moment the stone was placed in the sky, it began to sparkle and dance. The stone had turned into a star. There it was, one star in all the night sky. Creator then took more stones and began to place them in just such a way that they made a picture in the sky. A picture made of stars, and oh, this pleased the animal people.
So there was a question about how to get access to these files. We produced the stories with the storytellers through NSF, and so we have the ability to make copies of them for people. We have not been given permission to just put them on the web for anybody to grab. So what we've done is we've uploaded all of the files to these websites that you see, and these websites are listed in the resource bank. So these websites have a place where you can upload the files. They've been compressed, and there's audio files only, as well as the video files for you to play there. And again, these links are available in the resource bank. Currently, they're available for you to upload until May 15th. So after May 15th, you'll have to ask us, contact us, and we'll see about getting you them if you aren't able to do it before then. You can see some of the different topics here of the different stories. In addition to SkyTellers, we wanted to let you know about a couple of other resources that you might be interested in. For the eclipse a couple of years ago, we produced some stories about eclipse stories from around the world, both lunar and solar eclipses, and you might be interested in some of these. Most of them are audio only, but they also have the text in there. And in addition to that, one of them includes video that is closed captioned and has an ASL signer. So that way, if you are sharing these things with your audiences, if you are using these during a webinar that you are giving, for instance, you are welcome to please take them, use them during your webinar and do an activity around them. And we'll be talking about activities in a second. Another resource here we wanted to let you know about, World Tales of the Moon. These are just a handful. There's 5 stories by professional storytellers from around the moon, well, from around the world about the moon. They're not from the moon. Let's go ahead and let's play one of them. Let me adjust the audio so it doesn't blast everybody here.
The drummer man sits there on the moon and plays his drum. His drum is a talking drum. He plays his talking drum for the spirits of our ancestors. Our ancestors are there on the moon. They are waiting for us. We cannot see our ancestors. We see only the drummer man. All night he plays and sings and chants and tells stories to our ancestors.
And again, these links are on the resource list. The World Tales of the Moon, Moon Stories from Around the World. This is a resource by NASA's Night Sky Network. And on that one, in addition to a link to the World Tales from the Moon, they have information about some different stories, additional stories, and each of those is basically a page with a very short amount of text, and so some ideas there. And the last page allows you to draw your own story, create your own story.
The drummer man's...
we don't need to hear him again. There are cultural stories from around the world. Every culture out there has had stories about the planets, the moon, the sun, the stars in the sky. Even some of them have had stories about auroras and clouds. And you may want to tell stories specific to your region, specific to your audience. You may want to invite a storyteller to join you in a presentation and share a story. If you want to tell your own stories, there's a couple of other resources. The Comfy Chair website has mythologies, mostly Greek mythologies, and they're detailed background ones. I wouldn't read them as it is. Many of you are very much accustomed to being storytellers yourselves. I would take that and turn it into a version that is appropriate for your audience. The Windows to the Universe doesn't have as many different stories, but they do have diverse stories. So they have stories from around the world as well about the constellations and other figures. So there's just so many different ideas that you could draw from and that you can incorporate into your programs this summer or even now virtually. We wanted to let you know about them. There's some activities as well, and Brooks is going to be telling some more about activities shortly, but 2 that I wanted to point out. The Lawrence Hall of Science, as part of the Kepler mission, created something called, well, they've had it before then, a sky wheel, where you can cut it out and make it so if you wanted to share this with your audiences, something they could print out and cut out on their own, something that you could print out and hand out or leave for them to pick up. And one of them is an opportunity for them to create their own constellations. It doesn't have the lines in between, it just has the stars. And of course, when you're doing storytelling of any kind, you want to give your audience an opportunity, your patrons an opportunity to take that and internalize it and reflect on it. And that could include in having them illustrate the story while they're hearing it. So while they're sitting and listening to you, they could be making their own drawings, or if circumstances permit and they have access to things like glue and crepe paper and construction paper, they could be making a mosaic or some other art product. So those are just a few ideas. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now, and we're going to be hearing more about ideas and ways to do virtual programs from Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Christine. Everyone give me a moment as I share my screen and my presentation. And let me see if I can get it into present mode. Okay, there we go. So as I said, I'm from the Anchorage Public Library. Here's just a couple little things about us. One thing that is unique about us is that we have a very urban areas and we have very rural areas, and we have people who have just come into our community from extremely rural Alaskan communities, off-road systems. And so we are kind of straddling a line between urban and rural. And when we looked at very quickly wanting to pivot to virtual programming, we had sort of like 3 days where one day we were going to just pull toys. Then the next day we decided to stop doing programming. And by the end of that day, we were told we were going to be closed at the end of that day. So it was a very quick transition. We really wanted to quickly pivot, and we looked at all of these issues. Anchorage is an extremely diverse area. We serve over 100 languages. And Alaska itself has poor connectivity. And of course, we have all of the issues where that is throughout our communities. Each family has a different level of connectivity, both devices and what sort of home internet they have. And of course, our own staff, once we got sent home, had different connectivity and devices available. And of course, we were worried about copyright, and we were worried about accessibility, which I'm going to talk a little bit about how to make it accessible across ability levels. You can see our main library there. We're actually not allowed back in that building right now because it's our emergency operating center for our city. So it's a little bit interesting. This is some of the social media that's been posted of people watching us do virtual programming. And I just wanted to start with the successes because I love these pictures that our families are sharing with us of children watching story times. So I'm going to start with tips about how to do the program physically, and then we'll go into some very STEAM specific ideas. So why should we do virtual story time? Dolly Parton is reading books. Celebrities are reading books. Authors are reading books. Why should, pretty good but not spectacular librarians be doing it? And it's because you're familiar. My kids only vaguely know who Dolly Parton is, but they know they're Storytime librarians, and they like to see that comfortable that person, that's their person, and they want to see them doing story time. And that's the feedback we are getting from our patrons and from my own children who've been watching other librarians do story time. So what do you need? You need a stable place for filming. That picture you can see is taken by a newspaper photographer who was doing that. You can see I am actually using our puppet theater. We also have tripods. We found that a laptop looks a little bit better than a phone because you can see the chat and you can see your own screen better than on a phone. And if possible, somebody else who is logged in as your institution who can manage live comments if you allow those. So we usually have somebody in another house because we're all working at home right now, or in another office. Zoom bombing is an issue, which we've been worried about, which is why we have not tried Zoom story times. But even on Facebook, we actually found we were attracting some Facebook trolls and had to delete comments as they were coming live, and actually had to ban a few people. So there is that. So when this first started, when we all switched to COVID, we heard all of the authors were saying, you have permission to read my books, which is fantastic, but they can't actually give permission. That belongs to the publishers. So in the link bank is a school library journal article that rounds up all of various statements from various publishers, and everybody has different rules. And mostly you just sort of need to email the publisher what book you're going to read. If you don't see a publisher, and there were a couple of publishers I used that were smaller that were not in that article, I went to their website, find the permissions there's always a permissions email address, and email them. And both the smaller publishers I emailed got back to me really quickly. An issue is how long you can leave the recording up. I'll tell you what we're doing because we're erring on the side of caution. Make sure you do a practice run. So the good is you can't see your audience squirm. So read those longer books, read that picture book nonfiction that you were always thought was a little bit too long for story time, because you can't see the kids squirm. You can't see their energy. You can't feed off that as a performer. And we're also finding from our social media contents that story time we feel like is normally a 2 to 5 year old activity, and we're getting 3 to 8 year olds. We're getting a lot of the younger elementary schools in our story time. And do create interaction. If you've ever watched all of the really fantastic children's performers, Mr. Rogers, Blue's Clues, all those great TV shows, they always pause, ask a question, pause for an answer, and then continue as though they've heard the children. So we're doing that. If we're running it live and people are typing their kids' names in the comments, we're saying hello to them. And of course, if you're doing Zoom story time, you can go a lot more with that. We've been mostly using Facebook, but there are live polls and such. Do what I'm terrible about. Please go slower. I have to practice about 23 times to go slower because I'm very naturally a fast speaker. Go slower, show the pictures for longer, repeat more. When we first started, I was like, don't talk about the situation. It's too scary. Let's just do story time. And now we are very consciously acknowledging the situation. We sing the Jay Brary hand washing song. And if you don't know it, it's in the link bank at every story time. We jokingly refer to where we are as our at-home branch. We are repeating messages that are being fed to us from the Department of Health and Human Services for our city. And they're asking us to highlight specific messages. And we're talking about social distancing. We're telling kids to remember to keep a moose between them and everyone they see out in public. We're in Alaska, so we talk about moose. You should probably find something else that's more specific to your community. We're also making sure we promote resources people can access. Like, I can't tell you, this is a really great book, but you can't come into the library to get it. So we're using our ebook collections, our Tumble Books, Sesame Street ebooks, and we're also encouraging people to try creative things at home. So I read Polar Bear Night, and then I retold the story in the same story time with random toys from my own daughter's toy box. And it was substituting, dinosaurs in there. And I was like, look, you can do this. If you have the same books that you've read, can you retell them? And just encouraging parents to continue to use the resources they have at home. So if you're used to doing a song with scarves, can you substitute a hand towel or a dish towel so families can find those creative substitutions available for them? We are posting all over social media, and we're always creating a follow-up graphic, something people can take home with them, which we usually did at Storytime. And for accessibility, if you are pre-recording on Facebook, Facebook Creator Studio can help you add captioning. Make sure you're always adding alt text on your still images so screen readers can read them. Those are our best. We're still working on accessibility. We pivoted really fast and we decided it was more important to start putting content out there. And we're coming back later and adding in the accessibility issues. Rather than we decided to start going and worry about getting perfect later. So that is where we are. We've added captioning to most of our adult programming, and we're working backwards to add it to our kids programming. Here's a couple examples of our follow-up graphics. Twinkle Twinkle Northern Lights is a follow-up to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and one of our most popular songs here in Alaska, of course. So on some STEAM-based storytime ideas. If you don't know this book, The Boo-Boos That Changed the World, it is one of my favorite stories, and it is the story of how Band-Aids were invented. So we read that, and we talked about all the really cool things people are doing. This is a nonfiction book. The people, all the mask makers with their sewing machines, the people with the 3D printers making ventilator parts, all these really cool inventions and in scientific ways that we are finding to help in this crisis. So that was a really fun tie-in for us. This is an owie song that we use as part of this story time. Usually when I do this live with kiddos, I have them like shout out to me where their owie is. And of course, we're trying to not do on our face right now. So I actually used a doll to like show knees and hands and various things. So a STEAM-based story times. So star stuff. These are all, there's a million great picture book nonfiction on the stars. I chose two that I have successfully myself used in Storytime that we loved. And then I chose two star books that are First Nations or Alaska Native stories, because of course, up here in Alaska, we are interested in Alaska Native and First Nations from Canada. The Origin of Day and Night by is from Inhabit Media. I emailed them and they gave me permission within like 3 hours. They were so quick. And See Alaska Heritage is Southeast Alaska Heritage, and that is a really great Alaska Native Star Institute star story as well. So another thing that we did is we did a virtual comic contest. Right now, I feel like everyone is overloaded. I don't know how virtual schooling is going where you are, but for us, it is a flood of resources that I have heard people use the fire hose metaphor in about 8 different meetings. It's a fire hose of resources aimed at everyone, and all we have is a straw. Virtual schooling is really uneven based off the school, the teacher, and the amount of resources and technology you have at home. So we wanted something that would be fun, but wouldn't tie kids to their screens any more than they're already tied to their screens. My own daughter is a kindergartner and she gets 3 Zoom meetings a day. We don't go to all of them because we can't do that many Zoom meetings in a day. And so we also intentionally didn't do something COVID related, because I feel like journal how you feel about your COVID experience is happening already. And we wanted to be like, draw a comic about a time traveling walrus, because that is a lot more fun. We're working with a local comic book artist and he's creating the prompts you can see there. So you choose a character and another character, a setting and a prop. We started with 3 days. That wasn't enough time. So we've gone up to about a week, and the kids, you can see one of our winning comics is there. Kids draw. A comic shop owner is partnered with us and he is donated prizes. We're not really sure how we're going to get them to kids, but eventually we're going to get back in our building and mail kids their prizes. And our comic book artist is also giving kids like individual feedback. Like, I really appreciated how you developed characters or created a conflict. And that was been amazing. The response from that has been really good. It's mainly been hitting that 8 to 12-year-old range as really enjoying it. I think the teenagers are all just completely overwhelmed. So there's so much virtually that we wanted something that could start on the internet, live on your kitchen table, and then maybe come back to the internet, but not be all online. And this was a really good option for us. And of course, we're starting to have these conversations for summer 2020 about where do we go. We just found out yesterday our Parks and Rec departments canceled all summer camps for the year. So we're looking at online summer reading programs. I've listed 3 of them there. I'm not being paid by any of them, so I won't shill for them. There's, of course, you can just put your log up on your website as a PDF. We've canceled all of our programs through June, and we're still currently debating about July. And we're really, again, looking at programs that don't necessarily, we are probably going to do some more Zoom programmings, invite authors in for Zoom presentations, do continue virtual story times, and all of those things. But we're also really trying to do things that you can do out in the world and share with your community through a social media post. For example, I don't know if you know story walks. We call them story tracks here. That is where you take a big campaign sign, type sign, and you put a picture of a storybook on each one, and you space it along a trail. And we already have sets of these, and so we're going to set these up around our parks and encourage families to read the book. It's easy to do that, maintain social distancing. There's a really great program in the SSI Bank called Jump to Jupiter that uses the same sort of signs to space out how, and we have created it last summer, so we're going to put it back up, where you use the same signs and you jump out how far, you know, the Earth is from the next planet, from the next planet, from the next planet, and you walk from the sun all the way through the planets. So I know you've all seen those teddy bear hunts in neighborhood windows that's sort of happening spontaneously around the country. And we're also looking at other, like I said, creation things. Saturday is National Pet Day. And so we're encouraging everyone to take a picture of their pet reading a book. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, because our state library is currently in a debate about this, is how do we count attendance for our virtual programs? Most of our story times right now are on Facebook Live, and they have a 1 second, 3 second, and 1 minute video view count. So many people are leaving their autoplay video up as it goes along that our 1 second video count is huge. So we are really counting that 1 minute video view. If you stuck with my video for a minute, you interacted with us long enough. I count you in a program if you came in and stayed for about a minute. So that's what I am counting for you as well. And now I know I saw a bunch of questions in the chat and I couldn't really see them. I talked fast, but now I am going to turn it back over to Claire. Thank you all very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, and thank you everyone for being so active in the chat box. We're loving just hearing ideas from you guys. If you have specific questions, we do ask that you put it in the Q&A, just so because sometimes things get buried in the chat box very quickly. And in the Q&A, we can make sure that we answer those questions. We are going to be moving into a bit of a discussion. So I'm going to do my best to read what I can from the chat box so that those of you on YouTube can be a part of this. But Brooks is going to pull up 2 discussion questions. And we want to hear from you what your thoughts are right now about all of this stuff. So Elizabeth talked a lot about how they are pivoting their programming to be virtual. And there's been a little bit of talk of having a live presentation versus a pre-recorded. We've also had some good discussions in the chat box about what if your patrons don't have access to internet, and how can you use your phone service to still get programs out to your patrons. So we're going to start with this first question here. Live versus pre-recorded programs. What are the pros and cons of both? Let's just start with live right now. So I'm going to read what I can from the chat box. Yes, Amanda said live scares me. Absolutely. You don't have a chance to go back and edit if you make a blunder. It can definitely be intimidating. Let's see, pre-recorded is more comfortable for us to produce, allows for retakes. Yeah, so that goes right back into what we said before. It can be a little intimidating to go live. Let's see, live can have connectivity issues, says Sydney. Absolutely. Everyone seems to be using Zoom right now, and everyone seems to have kids, with online school that they have to do. So the connectivity issues can definitely be an issue to go that route. Live can have pet or kid interference. Mary, that's actually one of my favorite parts of how we're doing meetings now. I love it when I see the human side of people and their kid comes in. But yes, absolutely, there can be disruptions. And then, like Elizabeth said, and Deanna is pointing out here, Facebook trolls and Zoom bombing is a problem. This can be, especially if you're doing programs for kids, that's something you really have to consider, just the security. All right, I'm going to go on to the next question, and you guys can keep adding your ideas and learn from each other, communicate with each other. But just for the interest of time, our next question here that we'd love to hear your thoughts on are, what other things have you done to make a story time interactive? And especially right now. So are you using puppets? Are you encouraging your patrons to draw along as you read? Let's hear your ideas. So let's see. Puppets, shakers, and crafts, says Elizabeth. Yeah, absolutely. Getting some kind of hands-on activity that you can encourage your patrons to do. Sing-alongs, making musical instruments. I love that. One of my favorite things that's been happening lately is all the live video streams that people are doing, but connecting through music is super important, especially right now. And let's go on maybe one more. Let's see, we have making Easter egg shakers, backyard crafts. Yeah, absolutely. Printable flannel stories made from paper. Right, so just encouraging, what materials do your patrons have at home? We don't want to encourage our patrons to go out and buy anything to do something along with us during our story time, but really using what people might have at home and encouraging them to do some kind of hands-on activity. Great.
See, from YouTube, we have finger plays and songs, Flitter Flutter. I don't know what Flitter Flutter is, but good to see we have some comments coming in from YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, and one more, this is awesome. For teens, we want to engage them as well. It's always great to go live on Instagram or create a TikTok account. Yeah, so seeing what your patrons are using every day, especially teens, young adults. There's other platforms that maybe we don't use every day that we could use to help engage our patrons. You guys have all kinds of great ideas. I hope you're learning from each other. We're learning a lot from you right now. Yeah, so in the interest of time, because we have some rich discussions too at the end, I think we're gonna move ahead. So thank you for your participation in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just want to address a few things I've seen in the chat box that have come up. For starters, yes, the slides will be available and the chat box recording will be available as well. We'll post both of those on our StarNet library, starnetlibraries.org/resources/webinars. So the same place that you signed up for the webinar. And I'll make a point to email everybody, all 500 of you afterwards, with those links as well. Just because the chat box discussion is great, and it could be, for us to look back on and get some great ideas. It could be really, really good. So also, Elizabeth mentioned an activity called Jump to Jupiter. Really, really great activity. It would be good for social distancing. I don't know why I didn't really think about putting that in the link bank. Greg or Claire, if you want to put Jump to Jupiter in the link bank for the folks, or if you go to our Clearinghouse and just search Jump or Jupiter, it should come up pretty quickly. So good stuff. All right, let's see, 140. So kind of go through this next part a little bit quickly, but we did want to talk a little bit about virtual night sky viewing opportunities. Okay, so I know you're saying like, oh, I did that last year. How does that tie into Imagine Your Story? When we talk about constellations, we talk about the night sky. You're talking about, the ways that different cultures have interpreted the night sky for so long. So, Greco-Roman, we know that they've looked at the night sky with their own interpretation. There's awesome other cultures that have looked at, or other cultural stories and interpretations of the night sky. And I think that encouraging your patrons to get out and look at constellations and to look at stars could be a really, really, really beneficial thing, especially if you're doing virtual programming. And I know you're saying like, oh, I'm not going to have a bunch of kids look through the same telescope eyepiece. And I think there's some really good opportunities outside of that. So I want to talk about these two groups, the Night Sky Network and Solar System Ambassadors. And I know I've talked about them on previous webinars. You probably heard a lot about them. They are NASA volunteer networks. The Night Sky Network is individual astronomy clubs. And the Solar System Ambassadors are actual individual volunteers. And they are, once again, volunteers. I'm not saying that you wouldn't want to, give them some chocolate or pay for their gas or something like that, but they are volunteers, and they are kind of working with our team a little bit to figure out how they can do more virtual programs and virtual engagement over the next few months. So if you are interested in participating in a virtual program with the Night Sky Network or a Solar System Ambassador volunteer, sometimes it's hard if you're in a rural area and there's not an astronomy club nearby or a volunteer nearby. You might feel like you're out of luck. But this virtual engagement could be a really good avenue. So I mentioned a survey at the beginning of this webinar, and it is in your resource sheet / link bank. If you fill out that survey and indicate that you are interested in doing virtual programming, a member of our team will work to connect you with a NASA volunteer, whether it's Night Sky Network or Solar System Ambassadors. So I just want to say that is an opportunity out there. I don't have a ton of information about it, but some other people from our team could help you out with that. So just a heads up, if you go and fill that COVID-19 response survey, which again is just trying to help us figure out how to pivot to help you all, we can potentially pair you up with a NASA Solar System Ambassador or a Night Sky Network club. Yeah, I worked with them in the past too. They're wonderful. They're not all the same. They're not all on the same level. Not all of them are, rock stars that will respond right away and do the, most amazing program ever. Although most of them will. So just, I can't make broad sweeping statements about all of the Night Sky Network clubs or Solar System Ambassadors, but my experiences have been really, really, really positive. All right. So I want to turn things over really quickly to Christine, and she's going to turn things over back to me after that.
Hi again, folks. So let's talk a little bit about some of this different ways that you can do a presentation if you are trying to share information about the night sky with your audiences. Well, the first thing is if you're doing a live webinar like this, but for your patrons, you could always, of course, go outside with your laptop or your phone or your tablet and say, hey, tonight, let's all face the, if it's clear or cloudy in your area, and let's all face towards the west. That really bright object out there right now, that's Venus. And you could tell them a little bit about Venus, tell them a story about Venus, and then ask them to look to the left or to the right or up or down from there, giving them directions, giving them sort of a live presentation from the night. So that's one thing that you could do. Start with the easiest things to find, though. Don't assume that people are going to be able to even find Venus. However, if you know how to find Venus, tonight, if it's clear where you are, go out and look for the brightest thing except for the sun or moon. It'll be in the west, brightest thing possible. As long as it's not moving in an airplane, it's Venus and you found it. So you could also do live sky presentations in the daytime. You could talk about Venus at night and its association with Quetzalcoatl in Mexican Aztec traditions or its association with the goddess Venus, the beautiful goddess, all sorts of different cultural traditions there. The sun, of course, every culture has a story about the sun. And if you happen to have a telescope at home or a pair of binoculars, and if you know how to use them very carefully with the sun, you can project the sun's image onto a piece of cardboard and show that via video, via your webinar with your audiences, and talk a little bit about the sun and about how it appears to be moving, if you see any giant sunspots, and just sort of give them a way to think about the sun in a different light. Again, with the sun, safety comes first. Make sure that you don't put your face, your arms, your hands, no flesh in front of the eyepiece. The eyepiece, you are projecting it out of the eyepiece and then focusing it on a piece of cardboard, because otherwise it's a giant magnifying glass and you could burn something very seriously. If your telescope has a finder scope attached to it, cover that up, tape it over, so that way you don't get the chance of burning some part of yourself with the finder scope while you're doing this. So if it's cloudy, or if you would like to try a virtual night sky presentation, there are so many different options there. One of the options is something called Stellarium. This is a free open source planetarium program. You can upload it to your computer for free. If you upload the app there is a fee for. And with it, you are able to show the sky, the night sky, constellations. You can go ahead and share art with your audiences. You can change your position to any position on Earth, and you can change the date. So if you want to use it to help your patrons look and see what they should be looking for this summer, you can change it to the summer night sky. It has all these different options. Some of the options are available with toolbars on the left-hand side for things like the location and the time. And some of the options are located in the bottom toolbar, such as bringing up different constellation outlines and figures. So play with it and enjoy it. It's open source, and you are more than welcome to use it. You could also use apps. There are so many different apps out there. Night Sky Lights, Skyview Free, Sky Safari. There's dozens of them. So if you have ones that are favorites of yours, please enter those in the chat box now and share them with each other. You can contact your local planetarium. The person there might be willing to work with you to do a night sky showing for you through working with you in combinations. Many of them are starting to do their own virtual programs now for their audiences. So that's another option. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Brooks now.
All right, thank you so much, Christine. And I just wanted to talk about two hands-on activities that you could potentially do that would be good at home. And I am going to kind of rush through this. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure we have enough time to hear from you all and to have a chat box discussion. So the first one's going to be, I'll do star power first, because it's going to take a little bit longer. So star power is an activity where you're basically making a projection box of different constellations. There is a how-to video that kind of walks you through how to do it. And it doesn't require too many resources, but I was kind of brainstorming on this webinar, like it requires maybe some tape, a box, like a shoe box, an index card. And I was like, what's an easier way to do star power, right? So again, we're making constellation projections here. And I thought, what's one thing that everybody probably has at their house right now that's hands-on STEM activity material? And that would be a toilet paper roll, right? We all have toilet paper rolls. So you could do star power with a toilet paper roll. Pretty easy. I got some aluminum foil here. So I'm gonna tear out a piece, probably a bit big, that's okay. And, oh, it's way too big. Sorry, I don't have my normal camera set up here, so I'm trying to show you all. So tear out a piece of aluminum foil, cover one side of your toilet paper roll, cover the other side of your toilet paper roll. All right. And rubber band one side, right? Okay. Rubber band the other side. I think these rubber bands came from a stalk of broccoli I bought yesterday. All right, so we have aluminum foil covered on both sides. I don't know how well you can see. On one side, we're going to need like a little viewfinder, okay? So we're just going to do a regular like pin, and we're going to poke it through there. That should be good enough. So you can see, with my background, actually, let me just do this real quick. All right, that's a little bit easier, and you can see my kitchen too. So we poked one hole in the end, and then take something like, this is like a skewer, like a kebab skewer. I mean, you could use a toothpick, you could use something like that. This is just the first thing I found. And you want to make your constellation, but you want to make it inverted. Okay, so that is the Big Dipper, right? And I have an inverted version on the bottom. So because I don't have a printer here, I'm just kind of doing this by sight, and it probably won't look that good, so I apologize in advance. But we're going to do an inverted version. All right. And so you see, I have the pretty bad version of the Big Dipper right here. But then when you project through, and again, you're probably not going to see anything because we're all doing this virtually. But when you project through, oh, my dog just came back inside. You might get a actual projection of, oops. Let's see here if I can get it. Okay, got my flashlight. You want to use a single bulb LED. So like a headlamp is not good, but something like your flashlight is good. Let's see if you're getting the projection at all. You know, this is kind of complicated, and you're not probably going to be able to see the projection, but that's okay. Just know that, yeah, you get a single bulb flashlight, and you can kind of project a constellation through there. Sorry, that was a little strained, but we have an awesome how-to video for that one too. One last other activity I want to talk about, and actually given our time, I'm not going to demo this one. It's just called Sky Heroes. We've been over it a few times in webinars, but you give your patrons a star chart, and you have them draw a constellation of their own based on the stars. So kind of like connect the dots of something or somebody that's been impactful to them. Okay, so like one of their heroes in their life if they want to make a constellation chart out of them. All right. So those are two steam ahead at home activities you can do. We have how-to videos for them as well. And other webinars that we've featured them on. But I want to jump into, we have about 10 minutes, and I want to jump into a final conversation with you all. So I first wanted to hear about what all you've been planning to do for summer 2020. And this is pretty open-ended, so if you don't see anything that you are planning to do, please put this in the chat box. It does work in really, I'm sorry, just seeing the chat box conversations right now. It works with better with a tissue box or something a little bit bigger for that star power activity. But just wanted to do it really, with something that we had easy and on hand. And you could make your own constellations. You could kind of do Sky Heroes first, and then possibly have your patrons do star power based on Sky Heroes. I think that would be a good thing. So Elizabeth is pointing out, Elizabeth lives in Anchorage, and she's pointing out that night sky viewings don't work when you have 20 hours of light, which Kelly and I found out last year when we went to do a workshop and we tried to set up a night sky viewing, and they're like, yeah, it doesn't get dark till 9:30. So you can also do a solar viewing with a solar system ambassador. So let me end this polling and go ahead and launch it or share the results. So it looks like surprising, a large amount of you have been planning night sky viewings. A lot of you have planned STEAM story times. And let's see. Wow, no, 72% of the voters that were planning to do hands-on activities. I love seeing that. Programs of subject matter experts, virtual programs. And let's see what we have in the chat box. Passport to the planets with Astro Reality. A messy art night. That sounds fun. Garden walks. Yeah, Kayla, check out the program Art in the Cosmic Connection. That would really, really be up your alley. All right. So Sharon, you're asking about if you'll get the chat info in the email. Yeah, I'll send an email, a follow-up out to everybody with the chat box info. We usually do a ton of drop-in baby and toddler story times. They'll be virtual this year if publishers extend their permissions. Okay. We had been planning a nature walk with our teens. This is Ruth, where they will also be getting to eat crickets. I don't know about that. It sounds intuitive though, for fun. All right, guys. So let me go ahead and get to our. Yeah, no, I want to go to all these programs too, Clay. These are great ideas. I want to go ahead and get into our first discussion, and this is kind of a broad question. And again, it'd be great to hear what you're doing in the chat box. We might not get to see everything, but so how does STEAM fit into the kind of adapted services that you're offering? I know a lot of libraries have had to pivot, I guess would be a good word, and adapt and be nimble. And so how do you kind of still think about STEAM and what you do as a library staff that's offering these programs this summer? So Rosie says, we are already planning a mythology constellations program in conjunction with a scientist liaison, and these resources will be great. Awesome. So Cheryl's saying, our parents prefer STEM or science, anything. And that might be different based on the community that you're at, your community interest. Valerie says, we're doing some simple STEAM videos with minimum materials as virtual programs. Very cool. Kitchen chemistry, science at home pickup kits that are very popular. So I'm seeing a lot of videos, weekly science experiment videos, okay? Lisa's saying she's sharing STEAM activities on Facebook that they can do at home. Somebody's saying we aren't calling it STEAM anymore, and hey, we have revamped it to Maker Mondays. All right. Oh, Tiffany, let's see if I can, excuse me, Tierney. I will be hosting my first online Girls Who Code program tonight. Wish me luck. Not sure if we will be able to do programming this summer. Okay. And yeah, good to hear about challenges too. Allison says, one of our challenges is that our library serves 3 school districts and there's a variety of school offerings. So it's good to know what your school district is offering and what they're asking their students and patrons to do. And what's Lori say? Yeah, Lori says, I'm thinking if we can use Stellarium along with the Native American stories, it might be a good Zoom program. I think so too, Lori. I think there's a lot of, I'm all about people getting out of the Greco-Roman constellations and talking about other cultural constellations. So I think there is a lot of opportunity with that. We'll provide some simple things like popsicle sticks for a puzzle. So offering some materials, okay. Kim is saying, we will be putting our take-home science kits online so parents and kids can do experiments and engineering challenges at home. All right. Very cool. I'm going to go on to our next discussion question. And before I do that, I just want to say you should be redirected to a SurveyMonkey link after this. We had one final discussion question that we probably won't get to. That's in your SurveyMonkey link. And that question is, how can we support you the most? So I would love for you all to be thinking about that. And then when you get to the survey after the webinar, yeah, we're here to support you all, and we want to know how we can do that the most. But let me get on to my next question. And this kind of is actually a dovetail of the second question to a certain degree, but what ideas do you have for adapting your summer programs? So specifically with Imagine Your Story, and I think some of you have kind of already answered that a little bit, but. Virtual Lego Club does sound fun. Is 30 years old too old to sign up for that? Because oh, okay, yeah, I love this. So all the prompts are at work, but we had things like build the tallest structure you can in 90 seconds and tied it into Rapunzel's tower. Oh, that's awesome. So that's a great engineering design challenge that you're tying into a story time. Okay. Let the kids grow a bean plant. That sounds fun. Oh, this is good. So Ashley says, instead of doing my live escape room at the branch, I'm doing digital escape rooms. I really like that idea. Yeah, so Allison's pointing out here that we really want to kind of emphasize using objects found around the house. You really don't want to encourage anybody to go out and buy anything. So when you're doing programs, really be sensitive about the materials. The last thing you would want is, like, well, you got to go to the craft store and buy all this stuff. Like this, Sandy says, imagine your story seems to perfectly align with the times that we are living in right now. Yeah, virtually. Very cool. Let's see what we have in the Q&A. And it seems like if y'all check the Q&A, Lisa Fuller, would you mind putting that in the chat? She said, to the person who asked about story walks, yes, there are rules to follow, but I can't seem to copy and paste the, well, maybe. And it's kellogghubbard.org/storywalk is the website. But thank you, Elizabeth. All right. Oh, Carol, this is interesting. You're saying we've been ordered to cease remote teaching to our community due to equity issues. Our families are spread out over 2 states in some remote locations that do not have access to internet or smartphone. encouraged to offer activities, but not grade. Okay. So Carol, it seems that you might be coming from a more academic or like a school organization then. All right. So everybody, we're kind of wrapping up here. It's 1:59 our time here in Colorado. And yeah, guys, gosh, even getting into this idea of access and internet access and everything's digital right now, and you know, providing equitable resources and hands-on activities. It's a really big issue, and I feel like we could spend all day talking about it and not be able to figure that out. So that's really something to be mindful too, is that there might be members of your community that don't have access to the internet that still would love some good engaging STEAM programming. So man, I can't wait to look through this chat box myself because I feel like I've missed about 80% of it, but I think we will get ready to end here, everybody. So from all of us, we really, really appreciate you joining in and just being so active in the chat box. This has really been great, and no tech problems either. Ooh, no dogs barking. So we hope that we are able to offer more of these for you all. And if you have any questions to follow up, you can feel free to email me, email Claire, and we'll be happy to pass along any resources. I'll send a follow-up email to everybody. Thank you. You all are rock stars. You are heroes, and you are doing really, really, really great work in your communities. So I really hope you can continue it and hope that we can support you all. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I dropped
Bye,
the
everybody.
link one more time in the chat, and have a great day.